What we're going to see here on our next part of the walk is something that's very unique to Jekyll Island. At one time in the late 1800s and up to 1942, some of the richest people in the world lived on this island. And as we're coming around, and you'll see some of the summer homes that they built here, and this was the home of like the Rockefellers and the old-time money that had been part of this island. And we'll see up here a very interesting thing, which is the people that have a croquet court. And the croquet court that's here, I can just imagine, and in the summer, people there. Now we have another example of some oak trees. Now these oak trees are very interesting. I'm going to imagine this oak tree is probably very old, at least 200 or 300 years old, and it was probably here when the Indians were here and when the slaves were here working, and it certainly was here during all that time when the rich people were here. Well, the rich people came and they built a clubhouse, and that's really what we're looking at right here. And they built a croquet court, and the croquet court is still there. And if you go out on this nice summer evening or early in the morning, you will see a croquet match, very likely in succession. Now, the island was basically going to remain an exclusive place, but what happened during World War II was that the Germans actually, in the early part of the war, with their U-boats, put some people ashore. And of course, people got very nervous about that, and they went to the government and said, "Can't you do something to stop these people?" And they said, no, we can't do that. We have other priorities. So in 1942, all of the homes that are here were closed down, and we're going to see in this next walk that we're going to be going by some of the area of the homes that were there that were basically used only during the winter months. An interesting sidelight is that Henry Ford wanted to move onto this island, and the story that I heard, I have no idea whether it's true or not, but he wasn't allowed to come on because his money was new money. So he and his wife got together and they went to a little town called Way, which is now called Richmond Hill, just up the road by 30 or 40 miles, and basically formed their own little town. What you're seeing over here to the right is the original dock, and in that dock it was the only way to get off on the island, so that was the way that they could restrict who came and who didn't go. So imagine here, as we're walking down this path, that we're actually walking down where ladies in pinafores and men in straw hats were walking the promenade. And I sort of imagine perhaps children being pushed in baby carriages, perhaps time as we're here. And of course, you can see all around these oak trees. Now, the oak trees are interesting. We have a shot here of Spanish moss. Oak trees and Spanish moss, at least in this area, always come together. Now, Spanish moss is neither Spanish nor is it moss. It's actually a form of an orchid. And the neat thing about the Spanish moss is that it takes nothing from the tree itself. It gets all of its nutrients from the air. So we saw earlier in the trail a big storm had thrown some Spanish moss on the ground. Now, the oak trees here also are very interesting because if you look at their leaves, they do not look like what you would consider a normal oak tree to look at. In the oak trees here, they're sort of round. They would be much more like what I would call an elm tree. And the oak trees here have adopted to the hot summers and the cool winters by actually having two sets of leaves. They'll have one set of leaves that they'll grow for the summer heat, and then those leaves will drop, and then they'll have another set that they will grow for the winter. And then, of course, as the warm weather comes, they drop that. You can see here that, remember some of those weeds I was talking about, the balm things? Well, here they're all planted and and brought in. And we'll see here as we're walking along, we'll come up to a place that is very special to me. But we can see as we walk, and just imagine that the world has changed. I would think that that road over there to the left may at one time have been dirt. Now, I'm sure this was paved because the ladies couldn't get their shoes dirty. But as I told you, in 1942, when all the rich people decided that they couldn't be there because they couldn't be guaranteed of their safety, the island was pretty much abandoned. And in 1948, the island was sold to the state of Georgia. So the whole island is now a state park. And gradually over time, the houses that were here that were abandoned have been redone. Now this particular house is a special one to me. It's called the Goodyear Cottage. And we'll take a quick look. If you have lots of placards and lots of reading if you want to look at what's there. And you can sort of get a flavor of what this looked like. And in this particular case, the man who lived here spent so much time working, and he died early, so he pretty much left the house to himself, to people, to his survivors, his family. But the interesting thing about the Goodyear Cottage is that it has become a collection for artists. So if you are interested in pottery or writing or weaving or any one of a variety of things, it's this place where you can go and do your craft. They'll have a little store here. If you ever are in Jekyll Island, I really recommend. It might be a great place to get some original art, all the way from photography to knitting and everything in between. I took a writing class here, and I also took a class in sculpture.